Okay. Yeah. Okay. A pleasant afternoon to everyone who's here with us today, live via Zoom. I am Erwin Romulo, one of your moderators for today. Today is a very special day. Exactly 35 years ago, we fought a dictator to reclaim our rights, freedom, and democracy. 35 years on, and the struggle continues.
Hi, Ragdi.
Hello.
I miss you. How's La Union?
Well, hello, Rekdi.
Hello, guys. So, as we commemorate the 35th anniversary of the EDSA People Power Revolution, let's shed light on the stories of the past. Join us as we remember one of the darkest eras in Philippine history. I am Cor Canares. Hello, and welcome to Ibang Klase, EDSA 35, Tumanda na, Nagtanda ba?
Ano kung sabihin ko sa'yo na may ile-level up pa ang pagkatuto? Dahil dito sa ibang klase, kakaiba ang klase. May palitan ng diskurso, bawal nga lang ang sapuan. May usapang nakakaintriga, hindi naman chismis. Facts only. Pero ding mala telenovela at pelikula. Name it, we got it. Kasaysayan, siyensya, politika, sining, musika. O ano, hahanap ka pa ba ng iba? Ibang klase, di ba?
Okay. This ibang klase is presented by Dakila, Philippine Collective for Modern Heroism and its Activista Center, and organized by the We the Future PH, a broad national youth movement for human rights and democracy.
Yes, and to know more about We the Future PH, you can visit www.wtf.ph or follow their social media accounts at We the Future PH on Facebook and Twitter and at We the Future_PH on Instagram. So ayun, andun sa main screen ang information about We the Future, WTF. Okay, before we proceed to our discussion, house rules muna tayo, no? So again, so nice to see everybody. 417 and counting participants. My gosh, talagang we will break the Zoom today. Diba? Parang dami Parang ito yung biggest Zoom meeting natin ever, I think.
And I hope ito na yung pinakamalaki ever.
Yes, true that. And so yeah, as much as possible, we want this program to be an open and safe space for everyone. No? As you can see, we are in a Zoom meeting format. So later on during our discussion, feel free to send in your insights on our chat box. Just be mindful and respectful to others. Kindly refrain from using offensive or violent language, such as hate speech towards other sectors or groups of people. No hateful or discriminatory comments towards race, gender, sexual orientation, or political beliefs. No to bullying. And while our panelists are in the middle of the discussion, we advise everyone to mute their microphones.
Okay, well noted, Director. Always, we have prepared on an open Jamboard for you to na naka-flash ngayon sa inyong screen ang link ng QR code. If you have any questions, kindly type it in ang ating Jamboard and later papag-usapan natin yan. This event will be used as public material of the organizing team. If you wish not to be included in any public post, please let us know. But in the meantime, I think, Quark, we are all set, so let's get started.
Yes.
Joining us today are distinct personalities from various fields of expertise. We are very lucky to be joined by a set of experts mula sa larangan ng kasaysayan, politika at sining. So let me introduce to you our first guest speaker. He is a public historian, academic, and television personality, best known for his works on Philippine history and his numerous appearances as a commentator on historical topics on Philippine television. Currently, he is a professor at De La Salle University Let us all welcome Professor Xiao Chua. Good afternoon, Xiao.
Makasaysayang hapon po, Quark, Erwin, at sa lahat ng ating mga nandito sa Lahing Dakila.
Hello. Okay, lacking okay.
All right. Hi, Prof.
Yeah.
Ayun. And our second guest speaker is a military historian and defense analyst. He has served as a consultant for the Office of the National Security Advisor and the Office of the President. He specializes in military history and has postgraduate studies in history from the University of the Philippines. He also occasionally teaches history and political science at several universities in Metro Manila. Our second speaker, please welcome Mr. Jose Antonio Custodio.
Hello, everybody. Hello, good afternoon to all of the attendees here. And yeah, it's great commemorating something that I was a part of. That makes me feel so old, actually. Thank you, thank you.
We'll ask you more about that later. No, not your age, but the event.
Wala pa si Chel eh. Ako pa pinakapatanda dito ata eh.
Nandito na po si Chel Joc, no? So our third resource speaker is a human rights lawyer, Dean of De La Salle University College of Law, and Chairman of the Free Legal Assistance Group. Let's welcome Attorney Jose Manuel Chel Jocno.
Hello, hi Erwin, hi Quark. Hello sa lahat ng nanonood at nakikinig. Excited na ako.
Ang ganda talaga ng boses ni Attorney Chel.
I don't know, bedroom voice.
Oh.
Hi, Attorney Chel, nice to see you.
Hi.
And our last speaker, but definitely not the least, is a TV personality, host, actress, and member of Actor League of Filipino Actors. Our fourth resource speaker, the beautiful and wonderful and awesome and talented Miss Ria Ataide.
Yeah, but hi. Oh my God, why am I here? I'm like so intimidated right now. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon.
Okay, so thank you so much for everyone for accepting our invitation. For sure, our participants are excited to hear a lot from you. We will delve deeper into the narrative of the past and how it is relevant to the present.
Oh yeah, and by the way, Erwin, we are joined today by various youths. So mula sa panic ng basta. And I think we're now ready to digest all the information na inihanda ng ating mga resource speaker. The chat box is open. Feel free to share your insights. Simulan na natin.
Okay, let's get started. But before I wanted to ask a question first, but let's dive into So magbalik na muna tayo sa kasaysayan. A lot of the things now are happening now in our country. May sinasabi rin sa nauulit na kasaysayan sa batas militar na kasalukuyan. Professor Xiao, what are your thoughts about this, and what do you think are the similarities and differences of the limitations on civic spaces and civil and political rights during the Marcos dictatorship and the current administration?
Wow! Napakainit ng tanong na yan, ano? Well, anyway, kailangan maintindihan muna natin, lalo na dun sa, ako, tama si Sir Custodio, no? Naabutan niya. Kami, hindi na namin naabutan niya ni Ria, no? Mga kabataan kami ni Ria. Hindi. 2 years old ako nung EDSA, pero yan po yung discipline ng kasaysayan.
Ganyan ang title, EDSA 353, Tumanda na Nagtanda ba?
Uy, paki-moderate yung para oo. Anyway, yun po, yung 2 years old lamang ako noon, pero kaya nga meron tayong kasaysayan, may disiplina tayo ng history. No? Kung saan tinitignan natin ang maraming testimonya ng mga taong nandun upang maintindihan kung ano nangyari. So sa mga hindi masyado pang nakakapagbasa niyan o sa mga hindi naabutan yon, basically pag sinabi mo kasing civic spaces, yung civic spaces hindi lang yan yung, of course lugar yan, spasyo yan, kung saan nakakapagpahayag kayo ng inyong pananaw ng malaya, ng hindi hinuhuli, no? At syempre, alam mo, maraming mga ang nangyari kasi diyan, syempre nung immediately pagdeklara ng martial law, dahil sa yung mga komunista yung kalaban na yung Marcos sinasabi niyang kalaban niya, talaga naghigpit talaga. So bawal yung aktivismo mismo, parang ikinonekta siya sa komunismo agad.
So kumbaga parang nilamp lahat kayo kalaban ng gobyerno, lahat kayo komunista at dapat lahat kayo ay makulong. So yung mga kinulong, tinorture yung mga yan, no? At sinasabing 35,000 ang nagdanas ng torture ayon sa tala ng mga eksperto. So ano yung sinasabi natin dito, no? Pag nakita mo naman, after some time, ililift yung martial law 1981, akala ng mga tao pwede na. So may mga demonstrasyon na nangyari by the early 1980s. Pero pag nakita mo kung paano i-disperse yung mga yon, matindi. Kasi talagang una, noong 1978, hinuhuli sila. Hinuli yung laban rally nun. And another one is yung sa Welcome Rotonda noong 1984, 'di ba? Binomba sila ng tear gas at saka ng tubig. Tapos tawag dito, nagpaputok pa diyan nga nabaril si Chancellor Fidel Nemenso nung kabataan niya, 'di ba, Sir Erwin? So
I was about to ask you about that actually. But sige, continue, Professor Xiao.
Basically, ang nakikita ko dito, may pagpipigil sa civic space kasi diktadura eh. Diktadura. Now, ngayon sinasabi nila, malaya naman na tayo eh. 'Di ba? In fact, nahalal nga sa isang demokrasya si Pangulong Duterte. Maraming supporter siya. So, 'di ba demokrasya ito? Now, dito natin malalaman. Alam nyo, ang mga leader nagbabago, para kasi ang nangyari diyan, tayong mga nagde-depend sa demokrasya, parang hindi na tayo nagbago. Yung sinasabi natin pare-pareho nung 1970s pa, 'di ba? Pero yung mga kalaban ng demokrasya, yung gustong agawin yung gains ng demokrasya, nagbabago yung mga yun. Kumbaga nag-aano sila, nag-level up. Kaya ang nangyari diyan, sila hindi mo na kailangan ng martial law ngayon. Kasi ngayon, how do you define civic space now? Hindi na lang yan limitado sa kalsada. 'Di ba? Yan ay yung kung saan kayo nagpapahayag sa cyberspace, sa social media. Alam nyo, hindi nyo na kailangan ng martial law para magkaroon ng parang maladiktadurang control sa impormasyon. Algorithm lang. Algorithm, mga kaibigan. Parang ang nangyayari, parang dati sinesensor pa yung impormasyon para hindi mo yan nalalaman. Ang nangyayari, ngayon, targeted ka na dahil sa data, no? At kung ano na lang yung gusto mong paniwalaan nila, yun na lang yung nababasa mo, lalo na kung supporter ka ng isang partido. So nangyayari, parang hindi mo na kailangan ng diktadura, pero parang ganun pa din. And the other one, last one, is yung tinatawag natin na ayun na nga, yung freedom of speech, hindi mo na kailangang isuppress yan. Kasi yung trolling halimbawa, yung organisadong pagbakbak doon sa mga kalaban mo at yung paglalap sa kanila again na bilang iisang kalaban mo na lahat sila ay kalaban ng gobyerno and therefore sila ay mga komunista at kailangan silang puksain, yun ang nangyari ngayon na nauulit na parang ngayon kinakabahan ka ngayon magsalita dahil baka sabihin nila kahit hindi komunismo yung sinasabi ko, i-red tag ako. So, ganyan yung mga na hindi kailangang yung kasaysayan ay maulit. Pero nakikita mo na nagbabago yung paraan at yung teknolohiya kung paano ito ginagawa.
Xiao, can I ask? That's a very interesting and very strong statement na saying that we don't need martial law anymore. And because you're pointing na we don't need to repeat history, but the thing is the context kaya hindi na nga kailangan ng kasi wala nang yung press freedom kasi it's all algorithm data. But what has stayed the same though? Do you believe? What is constant between 1972 and 2021?
Well, una sa lahat, yung napakalalim na tanong yan, pero syempre, yung flexibility ng mga nasa kapangyarihan, nakikita mo na parang yung kumbaga yung way ng pag-adapt nila sa pagbabago, kung paano nila i-usurp o at least napakalakas na termino ng usurp parang i-adapt, kunin para sa kanilang pakinabang yung iba't ibang mga bagay na dapat napapakinabangan ng sambayanan tulad ng demokrasya, human rights, justice system. So yun ang constant na kung titignan mo kung sino yung mga namamayani noon, ay parang sila pa rin yung namamayani ngayon o yung mga kamag-anak nila. 'Di ba?
Mm.
Parang kaya nga ang nangyayari, imbis na yung EDSA ay nagiging history lesson. Alam mo kasi dapat yung EDSA, hindi na natin
Okay.
pinagdiriwang 'yan. Parang Philippine
Okay.
Revolution, hindi mo naman pinagdiriwang ang Philippine Revolution eh. Kinukuhanan mo na lang 'yan ng aral, 'di ba?
Oo.
Kasi pagka
Oo.
yung gano'n no, parang yes, lie low na yung feeling diyan dahil history na 'yan, 35 years na. Pero kinukuhanan mo 'yan ng aral. Ano ba yung nagawa nating tama, ano yung hindi natin nagawa. Pero pag sinasabi mo kasi na sine-celebrate pa 'yan, meron ding mga nagsasabi na sinusuka nila 'yan na nakakainis, 'di ba? So,
Okay.
parang yun yung gusto kong i-point out dito na ano yung history kung paano rin ginamit at kung paano binabaluktot sa kanilang interest. So yan ang daming mga bagay na hanggang ngayon akala mo censorship noon lang yan, kahit ngayon nangyayari yan.
Quark, in your what do you think? I mean, you work in media more than I do these days. So, anong reaction mo kay isang sinasabi ni Xiao? Naka-mute kaya at Quark?
Nako. Yung Zoom meetings. But yun sinasabi ng mga tao na diba, parang martial law era siya ngayon. Pero mas tago or mas may parang may illusion na parang hindi oppressive kunwari ang government, ang gobyerno. So actually yung next question ko nga po Prof, is, di ba, pag-usapan natin yung mga naratibo, di ba?
Yes.
And we're all aware naman na importante yan, di ba? May crucial role po yun sa to immobilizing people or the other way around, di ba? Or creating fear and hysteria. Which, yun nga, yung sinabi mong red tagging, kasi, di ba yung communist threat, the red threat, napakaluma na po nun
Cold War!
Parang wala pa kayong maiisip na bagong threat, di ba? But in the context of martial law, ano po yung mga naratibo na nakatulong sa, toppling the dictatorship?
Well, i-konteksto natin na 14 years yung martial law rule. Of course, nilift yan noong 1981, pero sa totoo lang, it's still the same, It's the same animal. Kailangan makita natin na yung alam nyo, ito, let's be frank about this and we have to confront this reality. Alam mo, sa nakikita ko sa kasaysayan, parang yung human rights hindi masyadong matunog na naratibo para sa mga tao. Kasi alam mo, kumakalat naman kahit may censorship, kumakalat naman na may mga patayan na ginagawa ng parang extrajudicial killings nung panahon ng Marcos dictatorship. Ang problema, pinagbubulungan, natatakot yung mga tao, pero parang hindi sila lumaban. No, yun yung nakakalungkot doon na nakikita natin. So, kaya nga alam mo yung tatay ni Attorney Senator sana itatawag ko si Attorney Chel Jokno. Alam niyo yung pag-defend ng human rights ng tatay niya, talagang nahirapan talaga siya doon. Hindi madali yung ginawa. Kabayanihan talaga yun na sinuong nila yung panganib para ipagtanggol yung mga hindi mapagtanggol ang kanilang sarili na mga detainees, human rights violations victims and all of that, no? No, so ang nangyari, ano yung mga siguro ito yung lesson na maganda, anong naratibo yung nagpabagsak kay Marcos? So una, tingnan natin yung Ninoy Aquino assassination. Marami nang lumalaban kay Marcos, pero dumami nung namatay si Ninoy. Bakit? Kasi ang nangyari doon, pagkamatay ni Ninoy Aquino, binantayan ng 2,000 sundalo sa airport, na bakit namatay pa rin sa tanghaling tapat, parang yung naratibong nabuo sa tao, una, nagsakripisyo tong taong ito. Unang-una. Pangalawa, itong gobyernong ito, tanghaling tapat, sa under his watch, napatay itong si Ninoy. Either siyang pumatay o hindi, it doesn't matter. Either si Marcos ang nagpapatay o hindi, it doesn't matter. Hindi na tayo mababantayan ng taong ito. Hindi tayo mapoprotektahan. Dahil yung taong binantayan ng militar ng 2,000 hindi naprotektahan, paano pa kaya tayong maliliit? So the middle class came. Simpleng narrative, pero napaka-powerful. And then of course 1983, bumagsak ang ekonomiya ng sobra-sobra. Simula yan before the late 1970s, pababa ng pababa. Yung recession talagang bumagsak yung recession nangyari talaga 1983. So yung ekonomiya dahil bagsak na bagsak, tumataas ang presyo. Parang naramdaman ng tao, yung palang walang checks and balances, yung walang nagbabanta, yung hindi na yung walang kritisismo sa pangulo kaya nagiging parang yung mediocrity na dahil laging maganda yung naririnig niya, akala niya tama lagi yung ginagawa niya, yung walang checks and balances, walang demokrasya, basically, at walang human rights, ay pwede palang magpabagsak ng ekonomiya. So parang ang naging naratibo ng maraming human rights defenders noon, kapag nawala si Pangulong Marcos, magkakaroon tayo ng kaginhawaan dahil mawawala na yung sagka sa ating kaginhawaan. So, yung democracy and human rights should lead to kaginhawaan. Now, anong nangyari? Siyempre, nagkaproblema tayo dyan dahil hindi naman ganun kadali yun eh. Napakahirap na gawin, napakahirap talaga ng demokrasya sa totoo lang. So parang hanggang ngayon, maraming tao, although marami na tayong games after EDSA, parang yung iba, hinihintay pa rin yung pagkakataon na yung ginhawa ay bumaba sa tao. Ang problema nga, sabi ko nga lagi, ninanakaw, ni-usurp, gamitin na nga natin, ni-usurp yung gains of democracy of the selfish gains of the powerful. So kaya hindi mo masisisi ang tao, hindi ko sila matawag na bobo. May dahilan kung bakit sila naghahanap ng strongman rule, pero kailangan nga i-build natin yung mga narratives na yan na dapat nagli-lead ang human rights sa kaginhawaan.
Sorry pa, follow-up question po. Yung kasi basically nangyayari din yan ngayon, di ba? Yung ekonomiya bumabagsak, yung wala pang vaccine, di ba? Sinashutdown ulit yung mga yung mga networks or silence yung mga reporters. So bakit ngayon parang walang walang uprising kumpara sa 86? Ano yung difference?
Napakagandang tanong, Napakagandang tanong kasi i-konteksto rin natin na worldwide phenomenon itong nangyayari ito, hindi lang ito sa Pilipinas. Una, dahil na-realize ng makapangyarihan na hindi na kontrolado hindi na monopolyo ng media ang pagba-broadcast at gumawa na sila ng sarili nilang teknolohiya at way para makaabot sa tao. Ang nangyari ngayon, hindi mo na kailangang ang media hindi mo na kailangang dumaan sa media. Yan ang nangyari dyan. So, ang dali na lang i-demonize ang media na lahat kayo, lahat kayo fake news. Yan, fake news. So, siyempre, nung nagsara yung ABS-CBN, lahat ng sinasabi nila, bias daw ang media na yan, laging may kinikilingan. So, parang walang epekto yung pagsasara ng ABS-CBN, which I think is unfair kasi kung titignan mo naman yung ABS-CBN nun, ang dami nilang pro-Duterte na commentator sa DCMM. Diyos mio, no? Nakakaloka yan, Pero isang kailangan nating makita dito, bakit bumaba na yung ekonomi? Kasi alam mo, pataas naman yung ekonomiya natin since after Gloria, 'di ba si Pangulong Noynoy, the economic fundamentals was laid eh. So parang kahit papaano stable yung ating ekonomiya. Pandemic kasi. So nung bumabagsak ang ekonomiya natin dahil sa pandemic, parang yung maraming tao, parang naiintindihan nila na hirap ang gobyerno, ganyan. Although, of course, that shouldn't stop us from demanding na kailangan umayos-ayos din sila. Kasi they made great strides, pero ang dami pa rin, di ba, na lumalabas na corruption, ang dami pa rin lumalabas na pang-aabuso, tapos nadadagdag pa sa stress na may pandemic na nga tayo, eto pa, gagawa ng anti-terror law na parang nananakot na hindi naman tayo terorista, pero bakit may iilang tao lang na pwede magdesisyon na kahit sinong aktivista ay pwedeng maging terorista na para sa kanila. Napakaingat natin na ginagamit yung term na terorista na yan. Ang CPP, NPA, MNLF, hindi nga natin tinatawag na terorista noong 1990s kasi may pinaglalaban sila. I don't necessarily agree with them, pero may pinaglalaban sila. Ngayon, kahit sino ng sinasabi, bayaran ka, dilawan ka, terorista ka, mahilig sumusuporta kayo sa terorista. So nagiging mahirap for the human rights victims, human rights defenders again. Kaya nga yan, naiintindihan natin na si Atty. Chel Jokno laging natutrol, 'di ba? Kahit na wala namang ginawang masama, napakabait ng taong 'yan, 'di ba? Ganun na yung nangyari. Hindi mo na kailangan gumawa ng masama, paninindigan mo lang, pero may sisiraan ka na. Nakakalungkot 'yon at dapat yan ay sana mabago.
Okay. Thank you, Shao, for sharing all that. I think you've really pinpoint. You've made a lot of really interesting statements, especially about yung media and the government. But now like I was gonna ask you earlier, but I think we have Mr. Custodio, you're here, diba? And so I think we'd like to ask about something, but we haven't really don't know much about, which is let's go on to the topic of the military.
Yeah.
Yes, and so how did the Marcos regime use the military in limiting civic spaces then?
Well, basically, I will answer that with reminiscing actually, because
Okay.
I would really remember that the military had a lot. The militaries are supposed to be in the barracks, no?
Okay.
What does it mean? A professional military should stay in the barracks because of the fact that they have to they have to accept civilian supremacy over the military. No? So what happened during Marcos's time? What happened during Marcos's time was that the military became a tool of governance. No? It was used by Marcos in order to control society. No? The mandate of a military is actually to defend the territorial integrity of a country, against enemies of the enemies, no, foreign enemies specifically. That's why you have a military, but yung characteristic ng military kasi natin, it is prone to intervene internally. No?
Okay.
Why? History, basically. Just look back at history. The Philippine military is actually it wants to trace its history to the revolutionary period. No, that's why if you look at Philippine military anniversaries, it is pegged on when, for example, Aguinaldo set up the Philippine Army, the Terrace Convention, and what have you. However, the truth of the matter is that the Philippine military is traced to the counter guerrilla or counter revolutionary effort of the United States colonial powers here in this country. So when the Americans fought against us during the Filipino-American War, they enlisted the some Filipinos into certain groups like the Philippine Scouts and eventually the Philippine Constabulary. And this became the genesis of today's modern military. Hindi yung,
Okay.
not the revolutionary groups. So long story short, what I'm trying to say here is that the military is programmed to look internally, okay, ever since. So it
Okay.
wasn't really difficult for Marcos to unleash the military on the Philippines, okay,
Okay.
as his tool, to suppress
Oo.
dissent and what have you. So I do remember, for example, um, that the military and the police would really lord it over in matters of censorship. Okay, that for example, Camp Crame, which is for police, no, but Constabulary, Philippine Constabulary, dun, they would, do you remember? Anybody remember Jingle magazine?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, there you
Very
go,
well.
diba? Yeah, but do you remember? I think here goes my age, no? You at a certain point, alam naman natin natin carpenters, diba? Yung mga those ones who sing all those wonderful songs, Karen Carpenter and her brother. Well, they were all long hair, diba? Si what's the name of the brother?
Richard.
And Richard Carpenter, and of course at that time, the early 70s, uso yung hippie look, di ba? So ang gagawin ng Krame was that itong mga photos ng mga sikat na mga of these famous American and European artists, they would they would tamper with the photographs and make the hair short. So it would really look funny and bizarre if you look at by today's standards. But that was it, That was the level of their censorship at that time, I'm not even talking about the fact that Ninoy Aquino was tried by a military tribunal. Yun, sobra na yun, no? Why is a civilian being tried by a military tribunal, no? So kita mo, hindi lang sa judicial pa, pinasukan ng AFP. Then meron pang there was also the running of entities like Philcoa, for example. Philcoa, itong nasa UP, no? Katabi ng UP, that institution na pinagtitripan ng AFP ngayon. The Philcoa, it was run by a major or a junior, an AFP officer during the Marcos period. At some point, it was being run. So they were entering in all of those. So it was that level involvement in our affairs. No,
Yeah.
and at the same time we had this the MNLF rebellion. You know,
Yes.
which was that's why that's the issue I have with people count casualties on martial law. They keep on talking about 3,000 or several thousand were killed during martial law.
Yeah.
No, it's not like that. You have to include the MNLF rebellion because tens of thousands were killed there. You know, that
Okay.
was the bloodiest part of martial law. Nobody knew about that. Nobody would really. You see, it's very difficult to make a historical study of that period for the simple fact that you really don't have records that will really be reveal a lot, right? Because all the news was being suppressed, the records were being suppressed. People would just remember that, like at the time, I would be living in the middle in the Visayas region. Um, I was a young kid then, and there would be trucks that would be passing by Lahug in Cebu. You know,
It's Cebu.
yeah, there were trucks there in the middle
Yeah.
of the night. No, and the suspicion was that these were the bodies from Mindanao being brought back to Manila. No, from the AFP side. There are a lot of
Yeah.
and people weren't talking much about what was going on in that time. So it was the bizarre, like I said, the censorship was so bizarre. Everything was right. It was that bloody. Okay, you had that, and at the same time, you had also the cult worship of Marcos. My God, the cult worship.
Oh,
I do remember so many times that we would be told to go out in the streets because the daan si presidente. You know, I mean,
oh,
I was in grade 3 then, you know. So
okay.
dadaan daw si presidente, tapos bibilid kami sa lahat sa araw. But siguro by this time, it would be called child abuse na yung pinanggagawa namin
Ah,
to line na hindi pala dadaan si Marcos, no? So,
mm,
babalik ulit kami sa school. Those
mm,
things, no? Trying to
oh,
inculcate into us this cult worship that Marcos is the best, you know, hindi
oh,
yung best in the solar system, ibang tao yun, no? But the best and his
oh,
wife was the ulirang ginang, you know, the uliran,
I see.
ina,
Oh,
ganon. So
so,
ganon yung messaging. It was a strange time to live in, you know, dangerous to
so
be
sir,
exact.
naalala niyo yung macho ng bagong lipunan din?
May bagong
Wow.
Oo.
Nakakanta mo,
Oo.
ah.
Oo nga
ano
eh.
ano yung gusto mo, yung official version or yung unofficial version? Alam ko yung unofficial version.
I'd like to hear, I've never heard the unofficial version.
May bagong tuli. Oh, yun na yun.
No,
Wala na, ayoko
sir,
na.
it's interesting that you said about you mentioned the MNLF upright, you know, the massacre of the MNLF and in that memory of
In the-
yours in Lahug.
Yeah.
Kasi like it directly, alam mo, meron like Sila Diaz has a film called Mula sa Kung Ano ang Noon, and it
Mhm.
tackles exactly that. That
Yeah.
yung assertion is we always think of Manila when we think of the Marcos period, but we don't know. But could you
Yes.
give me a little bit more context, sir, about what happened then?
Kasi ang problema sa atin, it's always the same, you know. For example, why is a person like Duterte in this country right now? Because this country is it's a schizophrenic country ba yan? O bipolar country? If you're going to, there are two entities in this country. There's the city, okay, that we are all familiar with. It has democratic spaces. It has all of the, ang tawag niya kanina, civil space. Tama ba ang pagka? Civic space. Civic space. It has all of that. All these things. We can talk. We're gonna talk. Right now, we're talking to each other. We have no problem. Try doing this in certain provinces. Try doing that, no? Next thing you know, niratratan na yung bahay mo, no? So it's a different thing altogether. This is a very feudal country. Okay, so what happens is that what happens in the city is not a reflection of the entire country. There are things that are going on in the country that never changed ever since. You know, the warlordism, the counterinsurgency operations. I mean, for example, 10 years ago, what did we have in 2009 that was so terrible? You know, that was the Maguindanao massacre, diba?
Yes.
So can you imagine that, you know? And then you backtrack all the way to early 70s. It was a no quarters asked and given war. Actually, you see, the thing with the Philippines, we actually keep on talking, we keep on downplaying our problems here. Well, actually, we are actually in the midst of a civil war. We have always been in the midst of where Filipinos are killing Filipinos. In fact, the Philippine military has killed more Filipinos than it has killed foreigners. No, so what I'm trying to say is that in Mindanao at that time, it was a no quarters asked or given battle. So communities will be would be face the full brunt of military firepower. And many of these were suppressed. Accounts were suppressed. There would only be for example, I'm a military historian, so I do tend to talk with quite a number of old timers in the military. They will speak about things that were happening in Mindanao, how they would deal with communities. But you never find that go into print. So it's that type. And that's unfortunately it has also affected, like I was saying, it has also affected the the way the martial law historiography also, where it tends to be separated, ngayon yung context kasi sinasabi ko, it was a war, the military was outgunned at a certain point because the MNLF then they were getting high powered weaponry from a number of Middle Eastern and Southeast Asian countries, which one in particular we had actually sort of irritated in the 1960s. So payback time, Anyway, so there were a lot of soldiers getting killed. So basically, if you have a situation like that, it would be reasonable to assume that human rights observance just gets tossed out of the window, in the operations at that time, no?
Yung concept ng human rights talaga, parang it never caught on almost, especially in the past 4 years. We have some great comments sa chat box. Everyone just keep sending your insights, no? RG says tama ang mga pulis at militar ang tunay na pumapatay sa mga Pilipino. And Gian says, yep, guns and power are still the norm here in Mindanao. Life is basically a second commodity. And Gian says, yep, many warlords here in Mindanao, specifically in Sulu, Maguindanao, and Lanao region. So keep your comments coming. We're paying attention, and we will call them out. And everybody, FYI, no, lahat ng nandito sa meeting, we've reached 500 people. Yay! Congratulations. Nakila, lahat tayo mag-tag, no?
Okay. Nice.
Okay, Erwin, go ahead.
Tatanong ako, Attorney Chell. So,
yes, Erwin.
We've been talking about memories of martial law, but let me ask, do you remember, where were you in EDSA? Do you remember EDSA when it happened, February?
Yes, I was not here. I was taking up law in the States. But I got to see a lot more of EDSA than the people who were here. Kasi full coverage ang foreign press noon eh. And ang balita sa atin, censored noon, I recall my folks would call me up long distance just to find out what was happening in Manila. They would call me from Manila and ask me, oh, anong balita dyan? And I was glued to the TV. I would even take notes. Tapos kinekwento ko sa AirPods. But I only got to come home after EDSA na. Siguro mga August na yun, 86.
But when did you leave for the US?
I left the day after Ninoy was shot in August of 83.
Okay.
So I experienced martial law from 1972 up to 1983 when I was 11 years old nung dineklara ni Marcos ang martial law. So halos yung buong kabataan ko was under martial law.
And I mean, now that we're talking about, we're trying to contextualize it to the present. And of course, you're a much older, much more experienced man. But what similarities do you see from that period that you experienced during martial law and the current situation?
Well, there are a lot of similarities. Like I guess parallels might be a better word. Number one is the use of fear and violence. That was the favorite weapon of Marcos. Yung kanyang bogeyman was the communist. And he really drew from that fear of, the Red Scare. And the second parallel, of course, was the attacks on the media. Marcos time, full censorship yan.
Yeah.
And now, of course, we know what happened to ABS-CBN and the
Yeah.
other media outlets, Rappler and so forth.
Mhm.
The third parallel, which is not very much discussed, was how both Marcos and this administration have managed to control the judiciary. Kasi
Okay.
di ba, nung panahon ni Marcos, ito hindi masyadong na kikwento ito eh. A week after he declared martial law, Marcos required everyone in government to submit letters of resignation, including all the judges. And hawak ni Marcos lahat ng letter of resignation na yan. If he got a bad report about you, he would simply accept your resignation letter. And the next day, you're out of a job. And
It wasn't dated. I mean,
no,
it was
I
not.
mean, everyone was required to submit within a certain deadline. But these letters, he didn't accept them only when he wanted to. Then, hindi siya nakontento doon. In January of 1973, they changed the constitution. And in the 1973 constitution, he put in a provision that all members of the courts up to the Supreme Court remain in office until the age of 70 unless he decrees otherwise. So isipin niyo yun, for 14 years, hawak ni Marcos sa leeg lahat ng judge at justice natin. He owned all of them.
Yeah.
And can you imagine the effect on our legal profession? If you're a lawyer, you see the judge, alam mo na the judge owes his position to Malacanang. So if I want to get the best clients, I want to be the top law firm in the country, kailangan kabit ako sa palasyo. And that really changed the legal profession because there were many who succumbed to the temptation. They became glorified fixers because they just cultivated their relationship with the Marcoses and said, you want to win your case? Ako nang bahala. Just hire me as your lawyer and ayos na ito. Unfortunately, those networks were never dismantled after Marcos. Hanggang ngayon, some of those networks operate. And that's why our justice system to me was really one of the biggest bad or adverse effects of the Marcoses. Talagang sinira nila, pinatay nila yung justice system natin. Hanggang ngayon, we are feeling the effects of that. That's why grabe ang impunity, wala tayong accountability. A lot of that is because the legal profession was tainted by the Marcos dictatorship and the justice system itself the independence was totally destroyed by that dictatorship.
Okay.
Attorney Shell, some analysts say that after EDSA 1, 2, and 3, parang people power fatigue because Filipinos have grown tired of EDSA because nothing significantly changed. Do you believe in this, and why or why not?
Well, I feel that in some ways we missed a golden opportunity, especially with respect to the justice system. Because sad to say, all succeeding administrations after EDSA, pinabayaan nila yung justice system natin eh. Where it is now at a point where wala nang tiwala ang taong bayan sa hustisya sa atin. You ask anyone on the street, ikaw ba naniniwala ka na kung may problema, makakakuha ka ng justice dito sa ating bansa? And most people I've spoken to will say, paano po, ordinaryong Pilipino lang naman kami eh. Siguro kung malalaking tao ako, makakaasa ako na may justice. Pero ordinary citizens, they have no faith or confidence in our justice system. And can you imagine how crucial that is to the development of a country? When you have a justice system that doesn't work, you have no accountability. Walang matatakbuhan ng tao kahit sila yung naging biktima ng grave offense, grave human rights violation. Lahat naman tayo, isa lang ang tinatakbuhan natin. It's you go to the court when you can't get any other relief. But when you cannot rely on getting justice from the courts, where can you go? And this administration took advantage of that. They justified the war on drugs actually because wala naman mangyayari dyan eh. Pagka hinuli mo yan, buti pa, patayin mo na lang kasi pag hinuli mo yan, makakalusot lang yan eh. See, in that way, we have been avoiding the biggest elephant in the room as far as our country is concerned. And that is our terrible justice system. We can never develop as a country, yan ang paniwala ko, until we address that.
Okay. I'd like to ask a question, Attorney Chell. Kasi we've been talking about the things that largely, maybe unconsciously, but have not changed. We've talked about the suppression of the media, we've suppressed the government, now the judiciary. But I'd like to ask, and hopefully this is a little bit more positive, because we did topple Marcos in 1986. So what do you feel is the spirit of that happened? Many factors, and we'll discuss it a little bit later. What made the military shift its support? What happened with the mosquito press? But I'd like to know what you, since you were also young at the time, what do you think the youth has today that has similarity or parallels with the youth that was there that helped topple that regime? So that's basically the protest movement.
Tingin ko, the youth have always been the saving grace and really the prime movers of change in the country. You go back from the time of our revolts against Spain all the way up to now. They have an unbroken line of young people who are willing to fight for future generations. And to me, the youth of today, your DNA, nandiyan na sa inyong DNA yung pakikipaglaban para sa ating kalayaan at demokrasya. Doesn't have to be taught to you. It's already ingrained. That's why ako, despite the situation, I'm very optimistic about the future. Not because of what is the way our government is being run, but because of the young people who are willing to speak up and to stand up.
Okay, thank you. Rekli?
Yeah, let's have Ria in.
Hello.
Ria, are you there?
Yes, hi everyone. Hey.
Hello.
So Ria,
Uh,
you were not born.
well, yeah.
Right?
I was born 92. That was 1986.
So kasing edad lang kayo ni Xiao.
But I feel like I grew up in an environment where politics was very much talked about. Like my family's Sunday lunches involve discussing politics over the lunch table. Alam mo yun? Like I feel like because of that exposure in that sense. And my papita would always read newspapers in front of me, and then he'd be like, "You know what happened?" Like that's the only thing we talk about. So I feel like that helped me learn a lot about everything that went on. And he loves, you know, how, like your lolos love making kwento, during that time, blah blah blah, ganon. It was always like that. So yeah, I mean, not that I didn't live through it, but all the things that I've heard about it made me believe that I think EDSA is really about us taking control of what we deserve and what's rightfully ours. Anyway, okay.
What is EDSA to you, Ria?
To
Like,
me, it's like what is the spirit of EDSA?
yeah.
Yeah, parang to me, it's like people finding courage, hope, and a sense of solidarity. I really think, like we underestimate the power that we hold as a people. The government is supposed to be the one that's scared of us. We're a democracy, diba? So I feel like EDSA really just brings together the courage, hope, and solidarity. Yeah. Yeah.
Ria, no, I'd like to know kasi yun nga, Attorney Chell did say that he does think he's very optimistic because of the youth, and then because of you see nga in our history nga, it is the youth, young people that will actually empower that change. But what do you think is the role of people who are like me and Quark, much older, or people like Attorney Chell and ano, what do you think is how does the youth see an older generation? Do you just distrust everyone?
I mean, me siguro, ideally, and the way I see it is, we have high regard for what you guys have to say. I mean, seriously speaking, like the youth is easily affected by the environment, the people around them, their school, their religion, you know what I mean? Like all these factors have something to do with the way we're wired and the way we think. So I feel like yung role of the generation before us is really to keep the information going towards us, like we wouldn't really know much if it weren't for you guys. So it's really that. It's still talking about these things as like scary as things can be,
Mm.
or as intimidating as the world is at the moment, or the current situation in our country.
Mm.
I don't know, I strongly believe in kasi like talking about things, like bringing it up, so that especially
No.
because this is something that it's tagal na, so we don't know this. We weren't
Oo.
even born then. Like, what do I know?
Mm.
But
Okay.
in your opinion, how can the youth claim or reclaim their power as citizens to protect our space of freedom?
Ako, I really feel like we have to take ownership of our freedom. We have to be inspired by all the people that came before us. I mean, I get naman that our generation is a little bit jaded already, diba? Kasi parang, how do you, you know, the society that we live in the current situation that we're in, took years to build. Years to build. That's not gonna be like just a day to change that, diba? So a lot of us are jaded, but if it's not our generation, then who? So I feel like it's really our generation has to come together and siguro not be so not let fear run our thoughts and run our actions. Because we're not alone naman. I feel like we should find courage in the fact that there's so many of us that believe in the same thing. But yeah, there.
Okay. Okay, I think it's we're now ready to move on to the next part of our program, and then in this segment we will just allow our panelists to freely answer and share the insights and sentiments. This is an open conversation for our panelists, so pwede kayong mag-unmute anytime. So let's go to the first question. So how did the deprivation of freedom in civic spaces during martial law affect you, your community, and the whole nation? What are the freedoms which we may take granted for today that were absent during that period? I can repeat the question if you wanted, but anyone wants to answer that question first?
What's that?
Ito,
Yeah,
yung how did, yes, sir?
yung ano to, basically just knowing the truth, no, knowing something again, something that is not part of the cult belief, at that time. Like for example, and I have personal experiences on that, no.
Please.
I remember I was in high school, and then there was this thing, and I would call it, I'm director. We're talking about school, ha? So walang magrereklamo dyan sa linggo ko, ha? It was Kawat events. We would call it Kawat events. It's called current events, no? It's a digest that we were forced to buy every week, no? 25 centavos din yan. Grabe yun. Ilang laro din yan sa arcade, no? Pero yan, we had to shelve out that 25 centavos, no? For current events magazine. Anyway, that thing, that it's like it's the 1980s version of fake news, no. Kung bagang ngayon, 'di ba, puro internet lahat ngayon, 'di ba? Like you flip you turn open your mobile and what have you, your laptop, you will find all of this. During that time, it was all hard copy kami lahat, no. So these current events, meron dito, Marcos graduated from PMA. Alam ko yung totoo, hindi naman graduate sa PMA yung taong yan, no? Vanguard yung taong yan, no? Hindi naman siya PMA. So, raise ako ng hand sa teacher ko. Sabi ko, ma'am, hindi naman graduate ng PMA yan eh. Imagine me, 1982 yan, ha? 1982. I would shoot off my mouth like that. Hindi naman graduate sa PMA. Ay, kinuha ng teacher ko. At the time, wala kasing Bantay Bata 163. Sorry na lang, no? So, ginawa ng teacher ko, nirolyo yung current events, hinampas sa ulo ko. O, de tapos. Di ba? So, yung ganun level of the truth, no? It disappears, no? Wala pa tayo sa ano ba tawag dito, yung fear for your life, no? Like binanggit nga ni Xiao kanina, yung simple act ng pagde-demonstrate, no? At that time, kaya nga si Chancellor Fidel Nemenzo, who's a good friend of mine, no? He was shot in Welcome Rotonda ba yan, Xiao, no? Welcome Rotonda yan, di ba? Nandun pa yung lumang Discovery Disco Pub nung time na yan, no? So, ano yan eh? These are things that and we were like we would march through the streets then, no? Mga ano to, nung time na yan, college na ako noon. And going to Malacanang, and you'd practically like fear may konting fear ka But at that time, I would say na again, cities kasi no? Cities to no? So if the cities were like that, na medyo may fear factor ka na, no? May control, what more of the provinces, no? Na may kaibigan ako sa ibang mga officers na nga na sinasabi ko na nag-retire na. Kasi ginagawa nila doon grabe, no? What they would do, no? Travel restricted, no? Kasi ang time na yan, paakyat yung bilang ng NPA no? Sabi nga, 'di ba, Marcos was the best recruiter of the NPA. So as the NPA increased, so did the repression on communities, on ano to, so for example, a priest giving a sermon talking about social justice, ang gagawin ng detachment doon, pupunta sa simbahan. A-attend ng misa, tapos naka-kontodong full battle gear. O di anong epekto yan sa pare? 'Di ba? Ayun ganun. Those things were happening then, no? I could Chel, we could talk about a full litany of wonderful memories at that time.
But Attorney Jokno, would you care to add to the litany?
Ko lang yung experience ko with martial law because it really changed my entire life. I was born the 8th of 10 kids to my dad was a senator before martial law, and during that time when martial law was declared, he was still an incumbent. One evening, that is September 22, soldiers come to our house, knock on the door. Wala pang tokhang nun, pero parang tokhang na rin ang nangyari sa amin. And they took him away without any warrant of arrest or for no legal reason at all. My dad was never charged with any crime, and he spent 2 years in jail under the Marcos, the dictatorship. That really talagang bumaliktad yung mundo ko nung panahon na yun. I had never tasted that kind of injustice ever in my life. And that really affected me in a lot of ways and made me determined to become a lawyer and a human rights lawyer at that later on. So it was a life-changing experience really for me. And along the way, I met so many different people. Before martial law, ang pupunta sa bahay nun, mga politiko, naka-Mercedes-Benz, mga, big-time people. After my dad was released in 1974, ang mga nagpupunta sa bahay namin, hindi na ganon. Mga madre, mga pare, mga estudyante, mga manggagawa, mangingisda. And it really opened up a whole, I learned the reality of Philippine society during that part of martial law. And it's been a journey ever since. Kasi from that time until now, talagang ang tutok ko has always been on human rights. And it's in some ways we did have a lot of improvement. We made a lot of gains from the Marcos time up to this administration as far as human rights are concerned. By 2016, we had human rights offices in the AFP, the PNP. We were training soldiers and policemen. But of course, now that's all gone down the drain, and human rights is again, just like during the Marcos time, pinagbibintangan kami daw may kasalanan ng lahat ng problema ng lipunan.
Sorry. I'd like to ask, go directly.
May I just add something lang about, just add very, very briefly lang. Chel, isa ako sa mga nagpupunta sa bahay mo pala.
Yes.
We were with the Kaakbay Youth. Nung bata pa ako. Ngayon, hindi na ako bata. Kaakbay olds na ako. So there, yun lang naman. I saw your dad, by the way.
I mean, it's interesting, like si Xiao and Ria are too young to have memories of martial law. But I'd like to hear their perspectives on that era. I mean, especially from a historian and a youth leader like Ria. Can you please share with us something that you know from that period?
Well, basically, the main reason why I became a historian na very serious about this and to teach history actually is because of I watched Batas Militar in 1997. No? And before that, my grandmother was a public school teacher, was an activist, and she had activist friends who were tortured and killed during martial law. So talagang medyo parang lumaki ako sa busog ako sa mga kwento ng repression. Syempre ngayon parang syempre may mga tao nagsasabi sa na nung panahon ni Marcos maganda, nakatulong yung mga proyekto niya, may mga infrastructure siya. So pero ako mas tumatak sa akin yung bakit hindi natin at ito to si 1997 when Batas Militar was shown in television. That was only about a few decades after martial law was proclaimed and EDSA revolution happened. No, 1997 is like 21 years after EDSA. Bakit parang hindi not even 11 years, sorry, 11 years. So bakit parang a lot of us at that time were not being told of the atrocities. So mas nag-focus ako doon. So eventually I became no high school ako, gumawa ako ng paper on the human rights violations. Doon ko nalaman yung nangyari kay Senator Diokno, no, kina Ninoy Aquino at sa iba pang mga biktima na hindi kasing sikat nila noon. And that's the reason why I became a teacher, is to become an advocate for human rights sa hindi na ito maulit. And to also fight for the narratives of the victims na hanggang ngayon kinakawawa kasi pirming nauurirat ulit yung mga experience nila because instead of this becoming history at mag-heal na yung wounds nila, every time pinopolitika yung martial law narrative at yung EDSA narrative, kailangan ukil-kilin ulit yung kanilang mga experiences. Naawa na talaga ako sa mga human rights victims as pirming natutrol pa sila, nakalaban sila ng pamahalaan at kailangan talaga silang mapuksa nung panahon na yon, which is I think adding to their trauma na parang hindi natuto yung tao, parang nawalan ng saysay yung aming mga paghihirap noon at ngayon ay parang nauulit na. Tama si Sir Custodio na yung martial law atrocities hindi talaga yan. Kinukulong lang sa Maynila yung mga tao eh. Sa probinsya talaga nangyayari yan. And in fact, kung titignan mo yung bantayog ng mga bayani figures, aside from the fact na probinsya nangyari yung mga pagpatay, sa bantayog ng mga bayani makikita mo na most of the atrocities happened, no, yung pagpatay after the lifting of martial law, no? So ibig sabihin nung martial law nung decade na yun kinukulong pa yung mga tao, pero eventually nung wala nang pagbabawal, nung parang wala na daw martial law, pag may ginawa ka, tepok yung marami. So yun, yung mas malala pa nung 1980. So doon ako nag-focus sa human rights advocacy ng nung panahon na yun.
Yeah.
I don't know. Ako siguro, although I didn't experience it nga, again, all the stories I heard about the people that were being killed, student leaders that were being picked up out of nowhere, that was always just bothersome. And I think I was blessed enough. This is where you see the value of education. No? Parang I was blessed enough to go to schools that didn't teach me the wrong information. And I think, you go on YouTube, that's not what you see. There's stuff there that's like super not the truth. And I think that's also why I find it important to deepen our knowledge about things and make it go beyond the surface, because that's the only way you can start talking about it, because you don't want to be spreading the wrong information din naman, diba? So I think that's really just it.
Yeah. Well, sa YouTube, pag nakinig ka ng Showtime, pag makanap ka ng YouTube video sa Showtime, yun, tama yun, Ria. Okay, before we move on to our next segment, with Quark, let's read some interesting comments in our chat box.
Guys, just keep the messages going in the chat box. We will get to them eventually. Some good ones from Jenny May Ledesma. Kaya mas maraming tao na ngayon ang mas lumalapit pa kay Sir Rafi Tulfo dahil napakabagal ng justice system natin. Kung di ka mayaman, di ka papansinin. Kaya sana mumulat na tayo sa katotohanan at matuto tayong iboto yung karapat-dapat para unti-unting umayos na yung sistema sa ating bansa. Jenny May Riva says, the prime duty of the government is to serve and protect the people. Pero paano kung ang mga Pilipino ay natatakot na sa gobyerno natin dahil sa mga pinakikita nila sa atin? We also have
si Ryan Quatrona.
Okay.
Yeah, he says, we know that how Imelda used the arts as a weapon during their regime. She used it to pacify the people. But it's also a question, what do you think are the responsibilities of artists and creative individuals in the continuous fight against dictatorship then and now? Maybe we can tackle that a little later. Another comment from Giribel Hernandez. It's another question. How do we respond to our elders who have lived through martial law but undermine the spirit of activism by telling the youth, anong ipaglalaban mo, papatayin ka lang naman? Or why will you concern yourself on issues like that when you can do much more? So any reaction from our guests onto these comments? Oh, yung interesting yung how do we respond to elders who have lived through martial law but undermine the spirit of activism by telling the youth, anong paglalaban mo? Papatayin ka lang naman.
They have to decide on what they think is right. There's no easy way out there kasi that's your loved ones no?
Yeah.
Yung mga nanay mo, tatay mo, no? So it's something that they will have to really decide upon themselves, no, and think and if it's really worth the struggle that they're going to go. It's a personal approach here, no?
Yeah.
Depends on the context kasi there's no context. So, a parent might just be inquisitive only, no? If your parent is inquisitive, you talk with your mom and your dad, no? Pero kung yung magulang mo talagang may pinagdaanan din, no? Kasi there are a lot of people who were activists during the Marcos years, no? Na biglang ngayon makikita mo numero 1 Dutertards, di ba? Bakit? Ano nangyari, di ba? Kasi may napagdaanan yan na-frustrate yan no? May iba lumaya sa bansa, no? So kapag yung kanilang frustrations ayaw nila mangyari sa mga anak din nila, no? So that's something now that you have to, it's a case to case basis. You have to really process it with your parents. No, there's no quick, don't do anything quick na you might regret eventually. Process it with your parents. That's what I would say kasi sa mga kabataan dito.
Well, Chel, I'm sure your parents never told you this. Why will you concern yourself on issues like that when you can do much more?
You know, as a parent, syempre nag-aalala din ako when my kids who are all big already decide to join rallies and other protest activities. But mutual respect yan for me, they choose to do that, that's fine. I will really support them. But I'll never tell them to do it. Nasa kanila yun.
Yeah.
It's much harder, I think, with the youth who have parents who are, let's say, of a different political persuasion than they are. Doon talagang, I've had a lot of conversations with young people who have that kind of issue. Ako naman ang sinasabi ko parati sa kanila, alam niyo, yung mga magulang niyo, minamahal naman kayo niyan. At kahit nakikipag-away sila sa inyo, it's really out of concern more than anything else.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for konting lambing at konting timing as far as talking to them about issues that affect all of us.
Xiao and Ria, I want to ask you the other question actually. Yung if you don't mind, Xiao, what do you think are the responsibilities of artists and creative individuals in the continuous fight against dictatorship then and now? So kaya, si Ria na muna.
Si Ria na muna, yes.
Again, I strongly believe in the fact that we have to talk about things and things aren't brought to light unless people talk about them. And as artists, I think it's our duty to use the sphere of influence that we have. Not to sound self-righteous or anything, but I just feel like there's a greater purpose as to why we have that amount of followers or whatever. But to me naman kasi, the followers don't matter. It's like you can also influence within your sphere of influence with your cousins, with your friends, with your family. But anyway, as artists, I feel like it's also our duty to make it relevant, diba? Kasi pag nagiging uso, pag-uusapan.
Siguro, aside from the fact that pagsususog na rin to kay Ria, no, na we have to remember that it was the artists, diba, the poets, the essayists, the novelists who created this nation. And this will also tell us that defending human rights is not just of course importante yung going to the streets, reclaiming civic spaces, but also using your talents. Napakahalaga nun, using your talents for more creative ways to promote human rights. At ako, sasagutin ko rin yung unang tanong bilang pagsagot sa pangalawang tanong na ito. Totoong concern yun eh. Kasi nararamdaman ko rin yun na we are teaching people how to love their country. Pero lahat ng example natin, mga patay na matay. No? Paano mo mamahalin yung country? Magiging Rizal ka lang, Bonifacio. Diba? Magiging katulad ka ni Edgar Hopson. Pinapalalahanan ko sila na yun ang consequence. Ibig sabihin, hindi naman consequence in a sense na historically, yun yung nangyari sa kanila. Lahat tayo mamamatay eh. Do you live a meaningless, do you live a, do you want a meaningful life and meaningful death or otherwise? Diba? So, kaya pinapalalahanan ko sila doon sa sinabi ni Gat Andres Bonifacio na ang kasipagan sa paghahanap buhay ay siyang tunay na pagmamahal sa sarili, asawa, anak, kapatid o kabayan. So how do you love your country? How do you defend your brothers and sisters' human rights? Is to be the best that you can be. Because when you become the best that you can be, people look up to you. You have a platform. You can become an influencer in your own right, in your own sphere of influence. And in many ways, you can use that to make meaningful discussions na hindi bangayan, hindi sigawan, about what we can do to love our country. It's words are very powerful. Let us not underestimate the power of art, the power of actresses, actors, artists to create meaningful discussions about our country.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, we were gonna move on to our next segment. Pero before that, we just have one question from Christian Calano. Is there any organization po na nag-advocate ng diwa ng EDSA/human rights in the PH na pwede pong salihan ng youth katulad ko?
Can I answer? Can I answer? Huh? I'm answering Dakila. Yes. And with the future PH. Kaya may link po tayo dyan. Join na po tayo. At constant po yan. Ever since tinatagang Dakila decade ago. Patuloy po tayo na yan ang ating adhikain. At hindi lang ito human rights, history, no, pagkakapantay-pantay, pagtataguyod ng kultura at ng mga artistiko at creative ways on how to love our country. We are promoting yung mga tinatawag na hindi lang ito tungkol sa maging aggressive tayo about fighting for our rights, but really demonstrating, ito yung favorite ko yung radical empathy. Radical empathy. Kahit kalaban mo, paano mo pwedeng creatively na makausap mo, 'di ba? And eventually, magkaroon kayo ng consensus at makagawa kayo ng mga bagay-bagay na pwedeng makapagpabago sa ating lipunan one day at a time. So, I guess yan ang aking sagot dyan sa tanong na yan.
Yes. At kung bet nyo, sali kayo sa We the Future PH, www.wtf.ph/join. Ika nga ni Juju, may nakita siyang question sa Jamboard na ano ang ambag mo? And he just wants to say na sa simpleng pag-attend nyo ng webinar na to, ito ang ambag nyo. So, Erwin, let's go on to the next.
Okay. So this time we have our segment called Reactivist, wherein we will flash a short clip from the documentary film The Kingmaker and the hybrid film play Finding Ninoy, which our attendees will have access to watch at the Activista film screening website after this forum. So we want to see your genuine and authentic reaction after watching these clips we prepared. So now for the first clip, which I believe is The Kingmaker. So let's watch this.
Charlie. Candy para sa mga bata. Even at this stage, Even at my age, I can go around the world and bring world peace. I befriended all of them. I was always criticized for being excessive, but that is mothering. That is the spirit of mothering. You cannot quantify love. And with my spirit and character of mothering, I want to mother not only the Philippines, but the world.
Reactions, guys?
Oh,
Your faces say it all.
well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I can, ano to,
I love
Oh.
that documentary.
I
I remember seeing it and being like, what is this? Have you guys seen it? I mean
yeah,
them.
we,
Mga
we,
Oo.
friends.
we watched it
Oo.
I watched it in the premiere in CCP. Okay.
Ooh.
My take on that video, actually, the documentary, um, this might not be the run of the mill expected reaction, ha? Pero ang take ko dyan, ano yan eh, Imelda talks to a different audience, no? She's not talking to us eh. She's talking to a different sector, no? That thing, yung mga symbolic acts na yan, resonate yan eh. Imagine, this is a culture, that this is a society na bumibili ng boto na ano to, na meron tayong vote buying dito, di ba? Yun ang basic problema natin, no? So, acts like that resonate among certain levels, certain classes of people, no? Yung ganun eh, no? Certain sectors nagre-resonate yan. In fact, no, if you cut up that documentary, you can actually turn it into a pro-Imelda documentary. No,
Exactly.
you can. It's a very sympathetic documentary on Imelda. I was actually telling that to when I watched the presentation of that. Sabi ko doon sa kapag I was telling one of the people behind that documentary na kapag sinuspend mo yung iyong pagiging yung position mo against the Marcoses, no, or whatever, and you look at it from a different lens, may kita mo na parang parang sympathetic ata to yung director na to or whoever did that kay Imelda the music, for example, the music was very telling no, it went hand in hand with the way that she was giving out money. It was painting a very sympathetic figure. So actually, I'm just surprised but hindi pa nagla-latch on yung mga pro-Imelda dyan sa video na yan at sa documentary na yan. Gumagawa sila ng sariling spliced version yan and then ikalat nila sa kanilang mga sa mga social media accounts and what have you.
So, parang mukhang you have your own reaction.
Well, una sa lahat, thesis ko kasi sa MA si Imelda Marcos eh. So kumbaga parang nakakatuwa nga yan kasi yung script na yan ay matagal na. At noon nga in-interview ko siya nung college ako, nagtatago na lang ako sa likod ng aking kasama tapos minamurmur ko yung sinasabi niya, sabay kami. Ganun ka-scripted yan, ano? Pero ang sinasabi ko dito, kailangan makita natin ito na tandaan natin na sa Pilipino mahalaga yung kaginhawahan eh. And in many ways, more than political rights, again, I have to stress this reality. More than political rights, kaginhawahan talaga ang hinahanap nila. So parang yung mga yan, tulad ng sinabi ni Sir Custodio, these are symbolic things that they give, that they do, na parang, kasi alam mo, ganun ganun yung, bakit nakakakuha ng empathy yung mga politiko? When they do, ang tawag ko that yung the theatrics of malasakit, the theatrics of kasipagan, 'di ba? Papunta-punta sa mga kampo, papunta-punta sa mga ospital. Ayaw natin yung mga manager na magaling ang mag-manage, pero hindi mo sila makikita sa mga sa mga pulubi. Ganon ang So, Imelda Marcos mastered this. And we should not be fooled from thinking that this is only Imelda. 'Di ba? Lahat ng politiko ay ginawang pattern yan, yung Imeldific. 'Di ba? Itatago yung mga squatter sa mga malalaking pader, 'di ba? These are very Imelda gestures, no, na kaya nga kahit hindi lang sa judiciary tulad ng sinabi ni Sir Chel, pati yung political culture talagang na-impluwensyahan nila Hindi lang nagsimula sa kanila yan, pero napalakas talaga nila. So, we have to, kung nagki-cringe tayong lahat sa ganyan, isipin natin na ganyan ang maraming leader natin. And pangalawa, na yan ay hindi nagki-cringe ang tao dyan. Yan ang problema dyan. So, kailangan din magkaroon tayo ng, hindi naman education, kasi tandaan natin, may mga edukado ring naniniwala sa kanila eh. Diba? Parang ang kailangan talaga dito maipaliwanag na kapag nakikinabang ka sa maliliit na mga gestures na ganyan, hindi ka ginawaan yan na totoo. Temporaryo lang yan. Diba? Ang tunay na kaginawaan ay nasa magagandang pamumuno na hindi nagnanakaw ang tao at talagang epektibo. Ang problema kasi yung mga leader natin na nakukuha, either malinis na hindi magaling o epektibo na corrupt. Parang ganun lang naglalaro yung choices natin na sana hindi naman sana maging ganun. At piliin naman natin yung mga katulad ni Chel Jokno at iba pa na hindi ba na may paninindigan at meron ding kakayahan na yun lang talagang nasisiraan tayo dahil lang sa paninindigan natin.
I think
before we get to the next video for reactions, just a few reactions from our participants today. No, Jasmine Yan says, "Power comes from money. Ilan pa ba ang mga nabubulag ng pera niya?" She also says, baka kinuha niya uli off cam. We also have Mark Wanzan says, "Mr. Custodio, maybe you just gave them more ideas." And then Lester Molina says, "Patron-client syndrome, it persists." Ayun. So thank you everybody for being so, for participating so much. No? So Erwin, what's our next video?
Our next video, well, I produced it, so it's a bit weird. But the next video is we will flash. It's called Finding Ninoy. Just to give you a background, Finding Ninoy it's actually a preview because it was supposed to be a play, and it was supposed to center on the solitary confinement of Ninoy Aquino during martial law. Since we can't stage a play, so it was decontextualized into an experiment that probes if the we asked actor, some members of actor and several other people to interpret the text, and so it's a bit experiment. I really don't know how to explain it, so let's just show it.
Gaano pa katagal? Hanggang ano ang kayang tiisin ng bayang ito? Gaano ka ba ang pasensya nila? Kinuha ng bawat kalayaan nila? Bakit wala pa ring imik?
Bakit wala pa ring imik? Araw-araw may pinapaslang na bayani. May martir na nakabulagta sa mga tagong libingan. Hindi pa rin ba sapat?
Araw-araw may pinapaslang na bayani, may martir na nakabulagta sa mga tagong libingan. Hindi pa rin ba sapat? Anong hinihintay nila? Bayang indolente, bayang antukin, matiisin, takalipin, nalulong sa abuso, walang laban, walang bayag.
Ano pa ang hinihintay nila? Bayang indolente, bayang antukin, matiisin, utak alipin.
Gaano pa katagal? Hanggang ano ang kayang tiisin ng bayang to?
Hanggang ano ang kayang tiisin ng bayang ito?
Mr. Custodio, you want to go ahead and...
Ayan, okay, let's start from the very beginning, which is always a very wonderful place to start. And of course, andyan naman si Xiao, who's also a historian. No? Problem sa atin talaga is a sense of community. No? As a nation, we have a big problem with the sense of community. No? Hindi pa tayo, we have not consolidated as a nation state. No? Meron tayong problema on Filipino identity. Meron tayong problema ano bang mga hangarin ng isang Pilipino? Makalayas sa bansang ito, no? Dati pa yan ang hangarin ng mga maraming tao, no? So in that aspect, that's just a minute This is a little bit surface lang kung bakit matiisin tayo. You can throw in the level of religiosity that we have, or yung ibahala na si Diyos and all of those things that we have in our psyche, no? Pero I think it really boils down to yung sense of community, no? And you see that now it's all out yung napaka-fragmented natin ngayon. Ang bilis natin i-fragment, no? So kapag ganyan ang society mo, ade tatagal ang taong umaabuso sa kanya. No, it takes how many years did it take before we got rid of the Marcoses? How many years? How many years did it take? Anybody know how many years? Well, how many?
No, 35 years.
No, we haven't gotten rid of them actually.
Yes,
They're there.
exactly.
They're still there.
Exactly.
So exactly, tama, di ba? Is there. So the point is, yun ang problema ng isang bansa natin, na there's a tendency na I think nga yung pagkawala ng sense of community, no. So yung outrage nagiging individual, ang hirap mag-gel, no. Ang hirap mag-gel. It's an effort, no. And if you're someone who's an advocate, you actually feel the isolation. You can actually feel it mararamdaman mo yan na ilan lang kayo no. Tapos may kita mo na either yung mga kasama mo sa advocacy mo, like for example in my case, advocacy is the West Philippine Sea, no. 1995 pa ako nag-iingay tungkol sa West Philippine Sea, no. Yung kasama ko diyan, may makasama ako sa militar na yan ang ginagawa namin. Mo po si Duterte, naging tumahimik lahat sila. Ako na lang ilan lang kami nag-iingay. Tapos next thing I know, sila na wala na silang ginagawa na. Nag-enable na pa sila ng China. No? So yung ganun yun yung environment dito. It's very difficult, especially if you have a country which is still looking for its soul and its spirit, no? That's why we have insurgencies here na sinasabing terrorism, but they're practically, many of them are legitimate insurgencies with social justice problems, no. That's why like I said a while ago, that's why we're practically in the midst of a civil war, no. We just call it by other names. We call it rebellion, we call it internal security operations. But when a Filipino takes up arms against another Filipino, organizes armies, what do you call that? Picnic?
Sir Erwin?
Ciao.
Quark, oo. Well, ako ang reaction ko lang talaga really is to go back to that moment. Yung scene kasi na yun ay, of course, kinakwento ni Ninoy yan. I wrote about it in a paper called Liwanag sa Dilim. Kaya pwede nyo i-google yan. Xiao Chua, Liwanag sa Dilim. Mababasa nyo yung details doon. Pero ang hindi masyadong nakukwento dyan, ang kasama ni Ninoy doon, habang nasa solitary confinement siya at tinatanong tong mga bagay na ito, ang kasama niya sa Port Magsaysay noon si Pepe Diokno So parang ang mas pupunta doon sa thoughts ko ngayon, doon sa gusto kong tanungin si Atty. Chel, na nung, 'di ba, a few weeks yan na binartolina si Pepe at saka si Ninoy, tapos sinabihan ng pamilya sinolya mga gamit, 'di ba? Hindi na tabi ng militar, hindi na daw nila bakit niyo sinusolto? Hindi na daw nila kailangan 'yon. So ano yung, 'di ba, nawala sila, hindi niyo sila nakita. And then after that, of course, nung pintulutan na kayo finally to see him, Attorney Chel, can you bring us back to that? I think napakahirap na memorya nun para sa inyo.
Ay, very vivid hanggang ngayon yung pangyayaring yan. I remember my mom waking me up at about 5 in the morning and asking me to go down with her. Sabi niya, nandito yung mga sundalo, binabalik ang lahat ng gamit ni Dad. So we went down. There was a big 6x6 military truck and 2 or 3 soldiers were bringing down everything that we had brought into his cell in Fort Bonifacio. So yung mga libro niya, yung kanyang toaster oven, yung lahat ng gamit niya. And lumapit ngayon yung mom ko sa isang sundalo. Sabi niya ganun, ba't niya binabalik yan? Nasaan ang asawa ko? And they had obviously been told not to answer because none of them uttered a single word. When they brought down the last piece from the truck, they just got into the truck and drove away. Then the next memory I have is my mom telling me, magbihis ka, pupunta tayo kay Attorney Tanyada. That's the lolo of Erin. We went to his office in Ayala and he immediately prepared a petition for habeas corpus, which was eventually heard by the Supreme Court in the middle of the hearing. Nagkaroon ng recess, and when Attorney Tanyada came out, he said, the court said that you can visit. So sabi ng mom ko, saan kami pupunta? Basta sundan nyo lang yung convoy. So we had no idea that my dad and Ninoy had been moved out of Fort Bonifacio and brought all the way to Nueva Ecija. We get into our cars thinking that it will only take maybe half an hour to see him. And we're traveling for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Nasa Bulacan na kami. Hindi namin alam kung saan kami aabot. We eventually reached Fort Magsaysay at about 5 or 6 in the evening. And the camp commander greets us and says, okay, you have 30 minutes to visit your father or your husband, sabi sa mom ko. And my mom said, bumiyahe kami ng 5 oras tapos kalahating oras lang ang dalaw namin. And he said, well, I'm sorry, those are the orders. And when we went to see him, it was surreal. This was grabe talaga yung experience na yun. We were not allowed to touch. There were 2 layers of barbed wire between us, the family, and my dad. And when we saw him, he had clearly lost a lot of weight. Nung nakita namin siya, hawak-hawak niya yung pantalon niya from behind. So my mom said, ba't hawak-hawak yung pantalon mo? And he says, it's nothing. They didn't hurt me physically, he said, but they put me in a solitary confinement. They barred all the windows. Wala akong electric fan. And it was so hot in the room that he lost around 20 plus pounds in a span of 2 weeks. Wala siyang, yung ilaw, yung light switch nasa labas. So he didn't know if it was day or night. He wasn't allowed anything, even his rosary. Eventually they allowed him to have his rosary once a day and his pipe. But that was it. And it was later on, years later, we found out na kaya pala na ginawa sa kanila yon because the family of Ninoy, I think it was Cory, had tried to bring in some kind of a letter na huli sila, bringing it in, and ang parusa sa kay Ninoy was dadalhin siya sa solitary confinement. Sabit lang pala yung father ko noon. That's what we only learned that I think in 2012 or something when they opened up the memorial in Fort Magsaysay.
I'm curious about that letter, but I'll ask you about, because I know it may have been the one that he had smuggled out, rather, that we published in the South China Post.
Baka yun. Yeah. Yes. It was actually Pinoy who told us about it just a number of years ago.
Dagdag ko lang rejoinder, no, na sabi ni Cory Aquino sa isang interview na sila kasi yung pinauna yung mga Diokno. Yung mga Aquino ay sila yung susunod. Yeah. So parang ganito kagatindi yung naranasan nila na nakita nila kay Kapepe na pagpasok ng mga Aquino, yung mga Diokno daw naglalabasan, nagiiyakan. Hindi naman daw iyakin yung mga Diokno. Yun ang naalala ko na sinabi ni Tita Cory. So that's how grave it was.
I remember that kasi nung kausap ng camp commander yung si Tita Cory at my mom ko, sabi niya, sino po mauna sa inyo? And Cory was the one who said to my mom, kayo nang mauna. And yun, it was so traumatic that when we didn't want to leave him when the 30 minutes were up, but wala kaming choice, that when we were walking back to where the Aquinos were, lahat kami talaga nag-iiyakan nun. It was a mixture. It's a mixture of yung iyak na galit ka, na frustrated ka, wala kang magawa. You're up against this huge dictatorship that's so powerful. That's why when EDSA came, I was one of the happiest persons in the world, really. Because to me, imagine 14 years ng buhay ko, walang karapatan, walang kalayaan.
Okay. I think thank you for sharing that for that very those memories, Chel. Before we read more of the comments, maybe it's time to go into the next segment, Rec D. But before pala, as I've mentioned earlier, Activista will give exclusive access to everyone who joined us today to watch these 2 films. So later on, you will receive an email from Activista, including your access codes. You just need to go to watch.activista.ph, sign up using your email or Facebook account, type in the code, and you're good to go.
Yes, so we have a lot of comments here asking if they can watch the videos, if they can get a link for the videos.
Yeah.
Shaket kasi true, sabi ni Andrea Sabandal. It's very Andres Bonifacio, said Benedict Abiera. So I'm encouraging everyone to watch these documentaries if you want to delve deeper and know more about our history of martial law. So malaking bagay ito, lalo na ngayon na laganap ang fake news and historical revisionism and distortion.
That's right, Quark. And also by joining this kind of events, mas natututo tayo na mas lumalim ang kaalaman. So thank you to the organizer of this forum, Ibang Klase, We Are the Future PH, and of course to Dakila and Activista. Now, before we proceed to our question and answer part, which we know excited na kayo, we have something prepared for you. A great and impeccable artist is joining us today, right, Quark?
That's right, Erwin. At kanina pa siyang nag-aabang to dedicate us feel-good music. I think he's ready to sing for us. Jam and sing along and get ready for an awesome orgasm. Let's give it up for Shirebound and Busking.
Di ko kailangan maging iyong daigdig, nais ko lang manahan ka sa akin. Kahit panandaliang awit ng kuliglig, tunay na sining ating ani. Ano ang sasabihin ko? Anong isusunod sa'yo? May tamang sagot ba sa tanong? Sinong malulog? Yun ang kalamnan at buto, pero ang puso'y di iyo, hindi iyo lamang. Ito bang paglayang gusto mo? Kalayaang hindi iyo, hindi iyo lamang. Ito bang paglayang gusto mo? Kalayaang kulay abo, laman loob mo ba'y bato? Ang nais ko lamang ay maging sangkuliklik, hindi kailangan na manahan ka sa akin. Kahit panandali ang awit ng daigdig, tunay na sining ating ani. Hello, ako si Diego, miyembro ng Concerned Artists of the Philippines. Sakay ang kabayong kinakalawan, malignong din tinatablan ng bawang. Sa pangil nating ka, ika'y mawawala, buti na lang tayo'y may panangga. Ng aking gitara, pamatay pasista, laging kakasa, pasabog na kanta, di tayo papaulit sa kanila. Kung manlulupig ay kababayan, hayaan mo pa ang tayuan. Lahat sila'y abo, ni Lolo Emilio, dun laging nakakasabog na kanta. Di tayo papauli sa kanila. Sino sa atin ang terorista? Yung umaawit lang o yung pumapas lang? Aking gitara, pamatay pasista, laging nakakasabog na kanta. Di tayo papauli sa kanila.
Yung last song, sinulat ko isang flag ceremony dati sa Lumad School sa North Cotabato. Siguro ang gusto kong sabihin sa pagtugtog nito ay mahalagang tandaan natin yung mga kalaban natin at kilalanin, pero siguro mas importanteng panghawakan natin yung mga pinaglalaban natin, at yun naman yung tunay na dahilan kung bakit tayo naninindigan. At saka you do not rescue children by denying them their education. Title nito, Panunumpa.
Walang pag-iimbot at buong katapatan, may dilag kang tula at awit sa siyang minamahal. Alab ng puso ay hindi mamamatay, diwa at buhay man sa'yo ibibigay. Mahigit pa ba sa pagkadakila, dalisay? Tangal katarungan at laya natin ay lumilingi. Bituin at araw kailan pa man ay di magdidilim. Buhay ay langit sa piling mo, ligayang magmahal ng dahil sa'yo. Aling pag-ibig pa, aling pag-ibig pa, aling pag-ibig pa, wala nang wala. 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 Iaalay ko ang aking buhay, pagsisikap at pangarap.
Huwag matakot makibaka.
Thank you so much, Shirebound and Busking. They're very, very. I mean, it's really nice to see here that the music, how sweet it is, it still says packs a punch. So mukhang nabuhayan tayong lahat, and now I think our panelists are ready to answer your questions. Rec D, may tanong ka, do you have a first question from our audience?
Yes, we do. From Maria Karen de la Cruz. Do you think that people power 4, actually it's people power 4, not 3, could happen in this age?
Yeah.
Ano sa tingin nyo, guys?
Xiao, can you answer that? Because I think the question was people. I think it was phrased na Recdi nga no the
people part 3.
Yeah,
EDSA 3 daw.
EDSA 3, oh.
Yeah. Actually, kaya akala natin hindi EDSA yung EDSA 3 kasi natalo, hindi nagtagumpay, di ba? Pero kailangan makita natin na EDSA 3 talaga yun kasi yun yung masang Pilipino na sumuporta kay ERAP noon. No? So, contentious pero EDSA 3 yan. So, EDSA 4, magkaka-EDSA 4 ba? Actually, I do not know. As a historian, sometimes mahirap mag-hindsight. We only analyze based on facts. But, ako parang wish ko wag sana Kasi to build a stronger democracy, yung people power as a way to oust a leader, ay parang ang nangyayari dyan, na abruptly, natatapos yung pinuno, and then, ako, sorry, baka may magalit na iba, pero kasi we have to learn the lessons of the whole administration para malaman natin na ito pala yung tama. Kailangan maranasan natin yung buong spectrum ng administrasyon na iyon. Kasi ang nangyayari, imagine, no? For example, Joseph Estrada, because he was ousted by People Power 2, he almost won. No? He almost won in the 2010 elections kasi parang people were saying, kawawa naman si ERAP kung natapos niya yung term niya and all of that. And parang ang nangyari, parang you make a martyrs out of these people. So just imagine in the peak of his popularity, President Duterte will be ousted. Parang medyo ang mangyayari dyan, you just make him a hero. Every administration unravels after some time and near the end of the term, and then we will have lessons and people will vote based on those lessons. So I hope we strengthen the peaceful transition of power as a way of removing bad leaders and therefore exercise our right to vote. And make the right to vote a sacred duty of everyone na no kasi ang nangyari ngayon nakakatuwa, magta-tricycle ka lang hindi ka pa makaboto, sasakay ka lang sa jeep maglalakad di ka pa makaboto, tinatamad ka. Nung unang panahon dugo ang binabayad ng iba para lang sa karapatan sa pagboto. So I think we have to make that kind of commitment to our electoral processes.
Thank you, Xiao. Now, Attorney Chell, I'd like to ask you a question. I know you have to go in a bit, so I'd like to answer the question. So it could be a bit of this is from Jamboard. All of the discourse and content we consume can be considered to be an overarching echo chamber. As student and as artists, how do we break away from this echo chamber and inform people outside this echo chamber? So I mean, I guess it's how to make people care beyond our people who already are committed to the cause. Who may have not access to documentaries, plays, who basically don't care because marami naman tao, they just care about actually struggling, especially now poverty is so high more than ever. So how do they care about the past, and how do we reach out to them?
Well, I think it's a creative challenge for us to be able to reach out to more and more people beyond those who are in our circles. The problem we have with our social media platforms is we tend to gravitate only to those groups that think the same way that we do. But we will never be able to really make any gains kung hanggang doon lang tayo. That's why we have to find ways to reach people who ordinarily perhaps we would not be able to reach on the regular circles that we follow. It's a bit harder given the lockdown, given the nature of communication nowadays, but I think it's still very doable. The people who do comms and who are into arts, I think can really play a vital role in getting that kind of message across. Kung kami lang siguro baka hindi kami pakikinggan, but when we find really good ways to deliver the message, then that I think is more effective.
Okay, and thank you, Attorney Chell. Any final message that you want? Because I know you have to go, and thank you for sharing this afternoon with us. But given everything, anything you'd like to say to how many ilan na tayo, Recdi? Ilan na yung nanonood sa atin yun?
474. So and we did reach 500 at one point. So yeah.
Well, I just like to say that please never give up hope. There is always something good that will happen to us. And don't forget to register. Don't forget to make sure you exercise your right to vote in 2022. At sana may paliwanag din natin sa ating mga kasamahan at mga kapatid, kabarangay, etc. kung bakit mahalaga ang boto ng bawat isa. Every vote matters and your vote really counts. So I hope to see you all in the voting polls in 2022.
Thank you, Attorney Chel.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Paalam
na ako, ha?
Are you running?
Kayo magsasabi niyan, hindi ako.
Oo. Salamat po.
Thank you.
Thank you. Una na ako. Paalam.
We have another question from the chat, guys. Why are people still gullible enough to believe the Marcoses' propaganda? If we treated the Marcos family like the Ceausescus, I hope I got that correct, in Romania, would all of these propaganda that the anti-EDSA narrative uses stop or not even happen at all?
Maybe Ria can answer that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a matter of discernment. The internet and everywhere, actually, there's a widespread of information, both real and fake. And I think it's also a matter of personal discernment and personally telling people, like, what you know. I don't know. Right? I don't know.
Just to add to
sige.
Just to add to what Rhea said, now, the question is kung napatay ba yung mga Marcos, like what happened to the Ceausescus, mangyayari ba to? Actually, if the people power turned out to be violent, I don't think I don't really think it would change kasi alam mo sa totoo lang, there's a worldwide nostalgia for dictators. Kasi Mussolini, binitay nga, nilambitin nga yan, pinatay. Ngayon, may mga Mussolini fans. Diba? Same with the Ceausescus actually. May mga narrative ngayon na what happened to the Ceausescus were so parang injustice din. It was a human rights abuse. Mga ganong naratibo na hindi talaga napigilan dahil yun, may nostalgia for infrastructure builders, may nostalgia for people who had megalomaniac notions of nationhood, no, na kumbaga, I really thought that Marcos was ineffective in the censorship and the National Media Production Center was not as effective as it was because people power happened. Apparently they were very effective because the notions of grandeur permeated up to today to the minds of a lot of people who were alive at that time. Kaya nga parang ang hirap sa akin kasi lagi sinasabihan ako, Perme, di ka naman nabuhay nung martial law Di ka naman nabuhay nung people power bakit ka nagsasalita about it? Kami nabuhay at alam naming maganda ang buhay nung panahon na yun. And really, it's really not about that.
If I can add something about that, and also dun sa question about what do we do, no? That's one is basically kayo, no, as individuals, no, but you can only do so much as individuals. Alam naman natin yan. Kasi what are you up against? You're up against an entire machinery of government, no? Habang gagawin mo, mag-type ka, mag-keyboard work ka habang katapusan ng mundo, hindi. You have to organize. Organize, number one, no? Mag-organize kayo. Yung mga responsibility ng organizations is to be as inclusive as possible, get more members, get more strength and visibility. How do you deal with the situation right now? Get the act together, yung mga opposition, get your acts together. Yung babangayan kayo, nag-aano kayo, you don't trust each other, magkalokohan yan, di ba? Kalintikan yan no? You get your acts together, no? Kasi nga, yung kabilang side has the entire, like I said, machinery of the state, the propaganda machinery, plus whatever resources that it has, no? So that's what you need to do. You have to organize for the sino ba to? Itong mga mga existing groups, no? Wala na yung distrust. Ay, kabilang grupo yan. Wala tayong ano to eh. What have we learned in 1984? No? That in fact, the opposition split before the snap elections, di ba? Ano to, Xiao? Yung ano to, the bayan muna experience.
Boycott.
That was yung boycott, ano to, even before that, no, yung the bayan itself was supposed to be a united front, no. Ang nangyari, yung mga tao sa loob nag-away, no? Tapos nag-splinter sila, nagkaroon ng bayan, nagkaroon ng bandila, no? Had there not been for a confluence of events, number one, Marcos got sick. If Marcos did not get sick, I doubt we would have an EDSA, one, no? He got sick terribly sick, yung lupus, no? When he got sick, yung power, yung control niya sa power, weakened, no? And when it weakened, ang nangyari tuloy dyan, it brought in a power vacuum. So pasok ngayon tong si Imelda, pasok si Ver, pasok yung mga ano to, tapos yung mga military who were feeling disenfranchised already, dun sila nag-organize na, gumawa ng RAM and what have you, no? So this is what I'm talking about, no? EDSA 2, EDSA 1 happened precisely because of a confluence events and not and had it been left to yung mga organizations themselves, no, it might have not turned out as it had been, no. So that's something that we have, the lesson learned that has to be taken into heart is to organize, no, kasi nga yun nga ang problema sa atin no. Yung bang we are all willing, but sino ba ngayon ang mag-orchestrate? Who is going to strategize? You have to have strategy. Kung wala, kung mag-organize ka, have also an information strategy also. Paano mo i-address lahat ito, no? Again, discernment also is possible if you give them the opportunity not to be overwhelmed, no? Kasi expecting now, for example, no, in the lead up to the 2022 elections, ang mangyayari ngayon, mag-ramp up ng disinformation, no? May kita mo lang sa sa vaccination program ngayon no? The way that the trolls operate na shut down, no? So how do you challenge that no? So you can only challenge that with an organized information system backed up by a good strategy, backed up by organizations that are actively organizing and networking with each other. And I would suggest for everybody here is there's a New York Times article, how the Democrats won, no, in the previous elections sa US. Read it. It's very interesting because these are non-government organizations in the US who decided to cross from labor to business. They crossed boundaries and worked with each other. And ang nangyari, they overturned yung expected Trump victory. They were able to make a difference. That is something that is totally lacking here. And if that doesn't happen, it's going to be run pag 2022. You're going to live with that.
Okay. People Power Monument nga may run blank run na banners daw
Sir Custodio, if it maybe you can share the link to the at least to Dakila, and maybe you can share it after, or if you can actually share it now if it's not too much to ask to the New York Times.
It's too much to ask.
No, sige. Ano na lang?
No. But seriously, I'll give it to kasi I'll send it to sino ba? Sunshine of Our Life. Yes, I shall give it to our Sunshine, and then
salamat.
Yung New York Times article na yan. Yes.
Okay. Yun. One more question.
Sige, game. Becky.
Okay.
Do you have one?
Yes. How far can we trust our electoral system so we can convince others to participate in the said democratic process? Pero maybe I think that's been answered. So maybe I can just ask this last question from Nafrael Bachar. So, and I think this is going to segue into our closing remarks actually. What can you say about those who lost all hope for the country, and do you think this country still has a chance to be better based on today's events and slow-paced change? Yan. Xiao.
Okay.
Xiao.
Xiao muna tapos na to. Kami naman susunod.
Sige. Salamat. well, I want to question pala, I want to answer pala the question on should we trust the elections? We have no choice. We have to trust it. It's the only one we have. No? Pero bantayan natin. Okay, for closing, I guess what I can say here is the present administration, I will be fair, there were gains. Okay, there were gains. But it's thriving on the division of the country because of its rhetoric and the rhetoric of its supporters. Na pag-away-awayin tayo. The main message of EDSA is really pagmamahal sa kapwa, pakikipagkapwa-tao, 'di ba? Pakikiramay, 'di ba? Yung Pilipino mo, yun na nga tinuturo ng dakila, no? Radical empathy. No? Kahit hindi ka nag-agree sa kapwa mo, create meaningful conversations. Only then and then, when you do acts of love, no? You cannot do acts of love without hope. Eh. 'Di ba? Kapag hindi ka, alam mo yun, kapag wala ka ng pag-asa, hindi ka naiibig. Kaya nga si Andres Bonifacio, ang kanyang pangalan sa katipunan ay may pag-asa. 'Di ba? Kaya yun ang sinasabi ko. At ang pag-asa natin, ayon sa aral ng kasaysayan sa EDSA, iba-iba man tayo ng paniniwala, magkaisa tayo, lalo na kung may malaking hamon na nasa harapan natin. So, the only way to defeat division is to try to create unity. And how do you do that if you are telling people they're stupid if they don't agree with you? If you do not want to find concession when you're being radicalized by your own self-bubble in social media. So, nasa sa atin yun. And of course, laban lang. Laban. Gamitin ng talento. Gamitin ng inyong mga talento na nasa inyo. Creative resistance ang kailangan natin ngayon. Hindi pwedeng sigaw lang. Na-turn off ang tao sa sumisigaw. Sa totoo lang. Be creative in your resistance. And every time, every day, na kayo'y nagre-resist through your creative ways, tandaan nyo yung pinaalala sa akin ni Erwin, yung sinabi ng Amazonang warrior ng Sakdal Revolt na si Salud Algabre. No? At ano yung sinabi niya? Walang natatalong himagsikan. No revolution fails. Everything is a step to the right direction. Lahat ng hakbang ay tungo sa tamang direksyon. So lahat ng freedom fighters, yan ang kanilang sinabi. Gumawa lang kayo ng gawa. Huwag nyo nang isipin yung outcome. Laban ng laban creatively at pupunta rin tayo doon.
Thank you, Shao. Sir Custodio, can you, ikaw. Or si Ria na muna.
Yeah,
Si Rhea mo.
pressure doon si Sir Custodio. Okay. But I feel like attending forums like this is already it's already a step towards being hopeful. It's so reassuring to see that there are so many like-minded individuals. And I think that's something that should reassure you guys as well. Na, apart from attending, these forums, kasi they keep us aware and they give us a platform, not only to speak, but also to show us that there are so many people who think like us. We're not alone. So friends that are listening there, so I hope you guys continue to deepen your awareness and remember that whatever you learn today are things that you should be sharing to others. Diba? With all the fake news that's going around, we should be spreading the right information. So please speak, even if people judge or argue with you. Talk about these things within your sphere of influence. You don't need a bajillion followers, even within your circle of friends, of your family. So yeah, let's take ownership of our freedom and be inspired by all the people that came before us. And I know that a lot of us think that one person doesn't matter, like one vote doesn't matter. But diba, like a boulder can break. The small drops of water eventually through time that'll break through persistence, through collective effort. So yeah, let's just take precautions. I know it's scary, especially with the anti-terror law. I'm sorry, but don't let fear get in the way because again, we're not alone. And yeah, be afraid despite being brave. Be cautious despite being bold. Let's stand up for our rights and let's not give up our fight. So let's keep at it. It's been 35 years since EDSA. Let's try to imbibe that spirit now because more than ever, that's something that we need. So a step towards that is registering to vote. You have until September 30, correct? September 30, 2021. Don't miss out on the chance. Like Sir Chell said earlier, exercise, but also maximize your right to vote. Yun lang.
Thanks, Ria. Sir Tony.
Me? Sino? Ako.
Yes.
Me? Dapat inuna niyo muna ako, tapos yung dalawa sumunod para magkaroon ng hope. Anyway, again, let me be very frank here, okay? Final words, okay? Ika nga, no? What are you up against? You have to think first. What are you guys up against? What are we all up against here? No? In 2022, it's not just a mere election. You have to look at what the other side is fighting for. Who is the other side here? There are two entities. One is Duterte, okay? The camp of Duterte. What does Duterte and his camp not want to happen in their lives? You know what they don't want to happen? They do not want to go to jail. For what? Crimes against humanity, perhaps, and what have you. That is a very strong motivating thing for somebody to hold on to power. Okay? Does your belief that you want that thing, this thing that we're going experiencing now to end, does it match that desire of theirs to hang on to power? Because if not, you know, they're going to bulldozer over you. You have 1 year to organize to make sure that your words are heard by those people who need discernment, or those people who, if they get that 1,000, 2,000 peso bill, they will vote still that candidate who's going to be good for the country, and not say, ay, at least nakakuha ng 2,000 sa taong to, iboboto ko to. No? You don't. So, second, sino pa yung isang entity na hindi natin nakikita but it's there? In the first time in our post-war history, nangyari yan. It's none other than the BFF of Duterte. Who is the BFF of Duterte? And none other than China. And China wants the continuity. No? Gusto niya ng continuity dito. So it will invest in a successor. So yan ang challenges natin ngayon, no? So this is not an election that we've noticed that we've gone through before. No, this is entirely a different election. The stakes are so high for both sides. One side doesn't want to go to jail, and then its bedfellow doesn't want doesn't want the Americans to come back the way they used to be. They want to disrupt the alliance, no? So that this country turns into a Beijing satellite, no? So yun ang reality natin. So strengthen yourselves. We're in for a long struggle here, a long fight, and it's something that I will tell you that it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult. You're going to face so many challenges, and at a certain point, you will have to accept the fear, the pressure, the hostility. And I'm not talking to just yung mga viewers natin. I'm talking also to you guys in this panel. You will feel the heat. And there you go. Have I inspired you guys?
Yes, actually, on the contrary.
Yes, you have.
That's very inspiring.
Yeah, the comments. Eufemio Agbayani says, thanks for the real talk. And Rochelle Remolia says, we need more of this. So,
hello, Junjun. Yuffie.
Hello, Yuffie. Yuffie so cute actually. It's like a little teddy bear, no? A historical teddy bear. Si Yuffie.
Historian yan.
Oo, historian na to eh. Kasama ko dati sa Malacanang yan eh.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. And thank you, Erwin,
Thank you for being with us today. This forum, Ibang Klase, wouldn't be successful, insightful without your expertise. And definitely, we are looking forward to having another great conversation with all of you. Siyempre, pati rin sa mga ating mga participants.
Yeah, we hope we have enlightened some of the gray areas in our past and in the present. So now it is your turn to take action. Claim your power, register to vote. Also, please go to We the Future Philippines at WTF.ph.
Okay, we've heard the stories of the past, and in order not to repeat our history, you, the youth of today, have the power to make things right. Help us shape our future. Claim your power. Let us make things happen. Go straight to WTH.ph. Muli, salamat sa pagsasama natin ngayon. Ika-35 anibersaryo ng EDSA People Power Revolution. Ako si Erwin Romulo.
At ako si Quirk Henares. Hanggang sa ulitin, till the next Ibang Klase. This is EDSA 35, Tumanda na, Nagtanda ba. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great evening. Happy EDSA.
Happy EDSA.
Have you ever envisioned your future? How about the future of your own country? Did you know that youth like you can help shape society? History taught us that the youth sector plays a crucial role in shaping the world, either by joining social movements or exercising their right to vote. In 2019, 1/3 of the voting population of the Philippines is composed of the youth. Through our collective power, we make our shared vision for the Philippines happen. This is We the Future PH, a nonpartisan movement of sovereign Filipino youth standing for rights, freedom, and democracy. Spanning from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, the collective voices of over 100 youth organizations and individuals have gathered to craft a rights-based governance youth agenda. We the Future PH builds a roadmap of our shared vision of the Philippines, strengthens the youth's innate ability to claim rights and affect change, and unites youth in communities, cities, and regions nationwide in harnessing their collective power to directly campaign and carry out our shared vision of the Philippines. Our shared action can make or break our country's future. We take the lead as change makers to ensure that our shared vision of a better Philippines becomes reality. Are you ready to take the challenge? Join We the Future PH. Remember, we are the future.
Okay.
Have you ever envisioned your future?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much sa lahat ng mga nandito pa.
Kamusta na bayaw?
Ayos naman. Ayan.
Tulog po ba kayo yung mga nandito pa? Kaya hindi po kayo umaalis?
Congrats po sa lahat. Ayan.
Oo.
Yan, sa mga gustong mag-merienda na, pwede na pong mag-merienda. Ayan.
Mag-dinner na po kayo.
Dinner na po kayo. Uy, andito si John Ray.
Sino John Ray nandito nga, hindi nakapasok yan, nag-500 eh. Hindi siya nakapasok.
Next, si John Ray yung invite naman natin.
Sabi ni John Ray sa akin, dapat daw bigyan ko daw ng yung hope spin yung sasabihin ko. Sagot ko sa kanya, nyeta.
Hindi, okay naman yun eh. Kasi kailangan yung hope-based pa rin sa reality eh.
Ayan.
Oo.
May mga bata pa dito.
Hindi mo naman sinabing huwag kaming magkapag-asa eh.
Oo.
Diba?
Sabi
Si
ko naman,
UP din, no?
kaya sabi ko nga dapat nauna ako. Tapos si Xiao tsaka si si Ria sa susunod sa akin eh. Sa bagay.
Okay lang yun.
Oo. Sa
Si Eufemio, dapat gawing dakila. Umalis na, sayang.
Si
Dapat gawing
Eufemio.
dakila yung si Eufemio eh.
Ano to
Magaling yan.
Taking life yan si Eufemio ha?
Oo.
Ano to, government, nagtatrabaho sa gobyerno yan.
Ayan.
Pero kung mag-post
Prof. Custodio, Prof. Xiao Chua at Direct Erwin Romulo. Ayan, andito yung mga bata, sila Alex, sila Mads. Personal na magte-thank you sa inyo, sila Tin, si Julius yung nagsulat, si Sunshine, si Raf, at syempre ang ating Madam sa Dakila, si Miss Lenny.
Gago,
Miss Lenny.
Hi.
Thank you very much sa inyo.
The Madam.
I give you all my mouth clap.
Thank you, Erwin.
Thank you, Lenny. Julius, sorry na namamassacre namin yung script mo
Kinakabahan ngayon si Julius dahil sa'yo. Editor pala to ng Esquire.
Buti na lang nag-e-edit kaysa nagsasalita. Oo.
Thank you po.
Ang ragged ng ni Erwin Romulo, no?
Ha?
Ang ragged mo.
Sino yung
Ragged na pogi, no?
Oo. Parang si Valpeya din.
Ano yan? O nga pala, no? Long
Ano,
time
Prof?
no. Ano? At sino Prof?
Ikaw. Ano sabihin mo?
And then
thank you for we've never met pero it's a pleasure to be on this panel with you.
Yeah, thank you very much also for allowing me to spread mirth.
Set up tayo nila Lord tsaka nila
that is the
Prof.
reason.
Custodio.
That is the reason I think why Lord recommended me to parang kasi I'm known for this for saying these things